Hank woke up to find his phone showing 10 missed calls and the same number of voicemail messages. He didn't recognize the area code. After several run-ins with spam calls from Chinese robo-marketing, he set up his phone to send unknown numbers to voicemail. Usually, Beijing Betty didn't leave messages. His daughters weren't up yet, so he started listening to the messages. That's when he found out that his wife Randy wasn't in Jacksonville, Florida, to visit her parents and sister for the weekend, as she told him. Instead, she was in the burn unit of a hospital in Boulder, Colorado. Hank was silent for a moment. His phone was giving him news notifications. It was usually frustrating, but taking the time to disable this feature never seemed worth it. Something about fires stuck in his head. He realized he had seen a news headline with the words "fire" and "Boulder" when his phone screen came to life that morning. He went to the home page of the phone and saw the headline in the news. A terrible wildfire destroyed the suburban area of Boulder overnight. Interesting. Hank would be the first to admit that sometimes he wasn't the sharpest tool in the barn, but he really could think of only one reason why his wife Randy, in the 8th year of marriage, lied about where she was going to spend the weekend. He deliberately slowed down his pace. There's no point in rushing. He made coffee. The girls won't get up for at least another hour. He took the coffee to his wife's work area in the dining room and took her laptop. It turned out that he was now protected by a password he didn't know. But Randy was distracted and lazy, so he searched for the password written on some piece of paper and found it at the bottom of a drawer in a small desk. After gaining access, he discovered that she hadn't even closed her email browsers. She only turned off her computer, relying on her new password and, obviously, on her confidence that Hank would not invade her privacy. All the assumptions that existed in this family before this morning are no longer valid, Hank thought. And so it was. Everything has changed. She met her ex-college boyfriend, Josh Turner, at his Boulder home over the weekend while Josh's wife was away. This was the guy who broke Randy's heart by falling in love and marrying another woman. It seems that over the years he has developed remorse towards an abandoned woman, or just lust. There weren't many details in the emails, mostly just confirmation of arrival time. Hank assumed that they had poured out their hearts to each other over the phone. An interesting fact has surfaced. Her parents and sister knew and agreed to cover up her affair. It wasn't in emails, but in Facebook Messenger chats, which were also open. They all thought she should have married Josh, whose family had money. Hank just froze, as if he was watching a car crash in slow motion and couldn't look away. He took the time to take a deep breath and calm down a bit. He needed it, otherwise he could have punched holes in the plasterboard walls of the house. He called the hospital in Boulder. When the switchboard answered, he, on a hunch, asked if Josh Turner was a patient. When they asked Hank to identify his relationship with Mr. Turner, he said it was his friend. The operator then said that she could not provide any information. This response definitely confirmed that they had a patient named Josh Turner. Then Hank called the number left in his voicemail. It was a direct line to the hospital's admissions office. After he introduced himself, the clerk there told him that Randy had been delivered with third-degree burns over 80% of her body, including lung damage from smoke inhalation. The fire seems to have suddenly broken out in a drought-stricken area, spread quickly in strong winds, and cut off the only escape route. More than 100 houses were burned and destroyed. "I'm sorry," Hank said. "It can't be my wife. She's in Jacksonville, Florida. You must have the wrong information." He hung up the phone. Yes, of course, she was in Boulder. He felt it, but he wasn't going to make it easy for anyone. He looked into his wife's computer again and found Josh's Facebook page. Randy really made him one of her friends. There he found Josh's wife. She posted a public post from her family's home in San Diego asking for prayers because she had just learned that her husband had been hospitalized with severe burns in Boulder. It's time to get an answer to these prayers from the god of revenge, Hank thought, contacting Josh's wife on Facebook Messenger to introduce himself and share what he had found out. He left his phone number. Sometime later, finishing his coffee, he saw another missed call. He didn't recognize the number, but there was a voicemail from Josh's wife, Tina. Hank called her back. "Miss Turner? Is your name really Tina?" He should have asked. "Yes," she said with a sigh. "When I got married, it was possible to be afraid that this would happen to the woman that Josh rejected. I got married for love. Now it's just a complete rift. You must be Randy's husband." Yes. Of course, I knew about her when Josh and I met. He's been acting weird lately, but I didn't understand why. Now it all makes sense. Is it the same for you? Sort of. I knew about Josh, but Randy wasn't fussy at all, so I didn't notice anything. You're taking it easy, Hank. How do you do it? You also talk calmly. I'm taking pills, Tina said. Josh is badly burned. They've already put him in a medically induced coma. I lost my temper when I heard that. Now, now I'm just in shock, especially knowing the truth about what really happened. What is your wife's story? Badly burned. I don't know more than that. I told them it couldn't be her because my wife is in Florida. Tina giggled. Oh, the hospital is calling again. Let me answer, and let's keep in touch. She hung up, and Hank saved her number in his contacts so that the spam blocker wouldn't send the call to voicemail. A new call came in from Randy's father, Bob. Bob must have seen the news and got worried. Yes? Hank? Yes? There was a pause. Bob never liked Hank, and Hank took a dislike to Bob in return. But they always maintained the appearance of polite communication. Now, Bob noticed there was no sense of politeness. Hank, have you heard anything from Randy? Hank paused. This question must have cost Bob his blood, morally speaking. Why would I hear from her? She's upstairs in her old room, isn't she? Spending time with you, your rebellious wife, and your other goofy daughter. Bob realized that Hank knew. He sighed. Hank, she really loves you. I know we never got along. Bob, Hank interjected, his voice getting louder. This is bullshit. And before you continue to talk and annoy me even more, keep in mind that I understand perfectly well that you have always disliked me. You were sure I wasn't worthy of your daughter, but Josh was. Your wife and the other daughter also behaved like insinuating fools to me. I put up with it to keep the peace, but now it's over, and I want to make it clear. Hank hung up the phone. There was really nothing more to say. However, to save time, he blocked the phone numbers of Bob, as well as his mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Dad, why are you shouting? His daughter Nicole asked as she entered the kitchen. Her younger sister Rebecca followed her. Dad said a bad word, Rebecca announced. Really? Nicole asked. Say it again, Dad. I didn't hear that. Hank had to smile. What was that bad word, Becky? She frowned. I can't remember. You must have misheard. Now let's have breakfast. Today is going to be a pancake day. 3 pancakes each and some orange juice. Then both girls watched cartoons. After all, it was Saturday morning. They liked bubble guppies. Hank hoped that these were cartoons, the way to something more substantial, like Pinky and the Brain or Phineas and Ferb. The phone rang again. It was Tina Turner. The pills don't work. What? The pills I told you about that I take to calm down? Well, they don't work. Why do you say that, Miss Tina Turner? At the hospital, I was connected to the place where Josh is in intensive care. The nurse put me on speaker. She thought it might help Josh to hear my voice, even though he's in a coma. So what? I lost my temper. I shouted that his girlfriend was badly burned too and would probably die, and that it was his fault, and that after you and I both received life insurance payments, we would go on a cruise around the world and spend all the time using each other to a stupor to pay off. His heart almost stopped when he heard me. Even though he's in a coma? Yes. It's hard to say if my screaming was the reason for this, or if it was just a coincidence. However, he pulled through. I'm sorry. She paused. Sorry. Why are you sorry? Are you sorry that his heart almost stopped? Or are you sorry that he's still alive? All of Hank's instincts tended towards cruelty, but he controlled himself. It's just a pity that everything turned out this way. Me too. After a pause, he asked, Tell me about this cruise we're going on. I'm sorry. I do not know where it came from. Still, I'm interested. I bet that's the way it is. She paused. Are you really interested, Hank? I saw on Facebook that you have a beautiful face, but I didn't follow you much on the internet. If I had to spend time getting revenge by making love to someone, you'd be a pretty good choice. Why are you asking? Do I have a chance? I do not know, she replied slowly. It's just that I've spent the time since I realized he was cheating, wondering what was wrong with me. Seeing that you're interested, I feel a little better. You don't look so bad yourself, anyway. Hank snorted. Thanks. It's nice to hear that, even if my wife clearly preferred your husband. Maybe the problem is not with us. For some reason, I think so too. Tina Turner paused again. Have you ever wondered why they did it? I suppose it's because they thought they could make love on the side and get away with it. It sounds so simple. Well, what else? Tina said decisively. Listen to me. We both have a lot to digest, but let's keep in touch. We are the only two people who understand how the other is feeling right now. Good, good. I need to buy Bermuda shorts on Amazon for a cruise. And swimming trunks. She giggled. At least you make me feel better. Maybe the pills worked. Rent a cabin with a balcony. She giggled again. Bye. They hung up the phone. Hank saw that he had another voice message. It was a hospital again. He called back and connected with the nurse in Randy's room. She also turned on the speakerphone. It must be a different nurse, not the one who took care of Josh, but they all seemed to be acting on the same set of industry-specific medical instructions. Mr. Henry Becker? Yes. I'm Nurse Young. We're on speakerphone right now. I am in the burn intensive care unit of the hospital. Your wife is here. She is severely burned and is in a medically induced coma. She's right next to me. We hope that the sound of your voice can help, even if she is unconscious. Hank thought that after today, the hospital would have to update its standard procedures for working with the patient's family. But he had to ask, why do you think so? I wasn't there when she was brought in. One of my girlfriends was there. She said your wife had a death grip on her hand and wouldn't let go until they realized what she was demanding. Call your husband? So sorry. Your wife fought the team with all the strength she had and wouldn't let them do anything until they assured her they would deliver the message. Okay. Too little and too late, Hank thought. What should I say? Tell her everything that's in your heart, the nurse said naively. Okay, Hank thought. The game begins. Listen, you pathetic liar. He was shouting at his wife on the phone. I hope you die in agony and spend eternity in hell with Josh, who will die too. Just so you know, I'm going to spend all the life insurance money I get to seduce Josh's wife. And I will never forgive you. The line broke. The nurse must not have listened when he started, but she seemed to come to her senses. Hank realized that at this rate he would not achieve his goals in the field of mental balance. One day he will probably feel some guilt for saying all this. But today was not the day. Dad, what does seduce mean? Becky asked, holding her teddy bear in her hands. My little ones. Oh, it means to mislead someone. She thought it over with a serious face. When is Mom coming home? That's what really pissed him off. The need to tell your daughters about what's going on. He should have thought about it carefully, but he wasn't in the mood. As soon as she can, Becky. Becky returned to the living room. Hank watched as she plopped down in front of the TV. There was no way in the world he was going to take the girls to the hospital in Colorado to see their mother wrapped in bandages like a mummy, so that they would not have such memories. 30 minutes later, he had tickets for a week at Disneyland, a reservation at one of Mickey's hotels, and plane tickets. They were leaving the next morning. Nicole will have to skip kindergarten a bit, but so be it. As soon as he got the tickets, the hospital called back. It turned out that Randy had a heart attack and died. All efforts to save her were in vain. Hank asked when. It was just at the time when he yelled at her. Maybe he would have advised Tina to try yelling at Josh again. No, let her figure it out for herself. In the end, Hank had to send Randy's health insurance information to the hospital to get them to provide him with death documents. He called the funeral home there and arranged for her cremation. With her burns, Hank thought he could get a discount, but they told him they were going to charge him full price anyway. He asked them to mail the ashes to him after they returned from Disney. Once there, the girls were sad that their mother was not with them, but they fortified themselves with enough sweets at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. Josh held out until Thursday. Tina wasn't yelling at him anymore, so maybe that helped him stay late. After his death, Tina returned to Colorado, lived with friends because her house burned down. She was acting like a noble widow for the sake of her children, she told Hank. She didn't tell them about Randy. Tina's children were older than Hank's, and they knew their father had been injured in the fire, so it would have been harder to ignore all of this. Hank's girls had no idea. He's going to keep it up for a while. But still, it wasn't easy to tell them anything bad about their mother. Shortly after they returned from Florida, a FedEx guy came to the door with 2 items requiring a signature. The first was a letter from her relatives. The second was a box of Randy's ashes. The letter requested that Randy's remains be provided so that they could organize a memorial service and funeral in Randy's hometown in Florida. If Hank did not want to organize something where he lived, they must have been calling someone, he realized. There was no apology in the letter for covering for Randy. This fact made it easier to make the next decision. He hired one teenage girl next door to babysit and left the girls telling the babysitter about a trip to Disney, complete with showing all their possessions and photos on an iPad. Hank then drove to a nearby national park. With a box of Randy's ashes packed in a bag slung over his shoulder, Hank set off for one of the far reaches of the park. It had deep cinder block toilets instead of bathrooms. He took a picture of himself dumping ashes in the bathroom. As he walked back to the car, he wondered if he should have done some kind of therapy, but the thing was, he wasn't angry anymore. Well, I wasn't angry enough to hit anyone. Destroying a reputation is a completely different matter. He posted a video on Facebook where he dumps ashes in the restroom along with an explanation. After that, he wondered if the National Park Service was going to issue him some kind of fine for polluting the cesspool. If so, he would be happy to pay. He never contacted her relatives, but he saw in the newspaper that they had some kind of memorial service in Jacksonville without him or his daughters. He told the girls that Mom had an accident while she was away and she wouldn't be back. They took it the way he expected. Fortunately, they had wonderful kindergarten teachers who helped and supported them. The life insurance payout was pleasant. Randy had more insurance than Hank thought. The insurance payments made it easier to rebuild his working life. He decided that his daughters needed more fresh air, especially on playgrounds where there were many children, and pretty young mothers, many of whom were very sympathetic to his tragic story. He left out the part about Randy cheating. He wanted to be sympathized with, not pitted. Girls began to be invited to a lot of play meetings, to which moms invited their cute single friends. Hank began to see a way forward. Hank had never met Tina Turner, although they chatted on the phone from time to time.